वेलकम टू यूपीएससी एक्सप्रेस सीरीज बाय VicThree IAS। मैं हूं अनमोल शर्मा और इस वीडियो में हम कंप्लीट टॉपिक कवर करेंगे एक ही शॉट में। दिस विल बी अ क्विक एंड फोकस्ड लेसन विदाउट वेस्टिंग टाइम। वीडियो के एंड तक यू विल हैव कंप्लीट कंसेप्चुअल क्लैरिटी एंड एवरीथिंग यू नीड about the topic for the exam. वीडियो के डिस्क्रिप्शन में you can find the complete notes of the topic and watch this video along with the notes. Also join the Telegram channel of VicThree IAS for schedule, notes and other study material. Subscribe to the channel and follow us on Instagram. तो चलो शुरू करते हैं.
So now we will be discussing about Mauryan Empire, and let's start with the story that you might have already heard, that during the Nanda dynasty that ruled Magadha, there was invasion of Alexander the Great from the northwest, and here Nanda dynasty was in power. So here in Takshila University there was a Brahmin scholar who went to Dhanananda, the king of Nanda dynasty, for help to defeat Alexander the Great, the foreigner. But Dhanananda was a very rude person and he insulted that Brahmin scholar. And since Nandas were considered to be Shudras, the Brahmin scholar felt very humiliated by the insult of from a Shudra, and he took a vow that he will replace the Nandas and create his own empire by putting somebody on the position. And that Brahmin scholar found a young ambitious boy from a very humble background, and he trained him in warfare, politics, strategy, prepared him, and made strategies with small kingdoms around Nanda dynasty, and ultimately using that or with the help of that small boy from a very normal background, overthrew Nanda dynasty and set the boy up as the new king. That boy was Chandragupta Maurya, and the Brahmin scholar was Kautilya, and that led to the foundation of Mauryan Empire. And it was the first time such a large scale political unification took place in Indian subcontinent, and such a large scale empire was formed for the first time in India. So that was the Mauryan Empire. Talking about the rulers, as we just discussed, the first ruler was Chandragupta Maurya with chief advisor Kautilya. The military skills of Chandragupta Maurya were complemented by the strategic insight or the diplomatic skills of Kautilya, and that created the foundation of Mauryan Empire in India, one of the greatest empires. Chandragupta Maurya overthrew Dhanananda with the help of Kautilya. He was also called Sandrocotus by the Greeks. So this can be a question: which king was also known as Sandrocotus? Certain titles of kings are hot topics in exams. And Chandragupta Maurya created a highly centralized empire in India, and it had to be centralized क्योंकि पहली बार इतना बड़ा एक empire था, and the king had to be strong, he had to be authoritative in order to keep all the parts of India together, right? But later in his life, Chandragupta Maurya, he embraced Jainism and he took Santhara and he became a Jain monk, and he left his throne to his son Bindusara. So Bindusara was the next ruler, and Bindusara was also called Amitro Cats. So this was his title. He further expanded the empire, Mauryan Empire, into the south, and he patronized, or he was a follower of Ajivika sect. So it's a particular sect that Bindusara was associated with. After Bindusara, Ashoka the Great became the ruler, and he is considered to be the greatest ruler of Mauryan dynasty, and in fact one of the greatest rulers of India. Right, so this was brief about the rulers of Mauryan Empire. You can find more details of each of these rulers in the notes in the description box Now we move on to the administration of Mauryas. So administration of Mauryan Empire was broadly based on the text Arthashastra written by Kautilya. So Kautilya's Arthashastra laid the foundation base for the administration, political affairs, diplomacy, and even society of Mauryan Empire. So it's a very important text. अर्थशास्त्र mentions that there are 7 elements. एक स्टेट के 7 elements होते हैं जो उसको of crucial importance, and the 7 elements of the state are, most importantly, the king. The king is the most important part of the state. Then comes his ministers. They have to be decided on merit. They have to be well qualified. Then the people, जो प्रजा है एक राज्य की, वो important है. Then a capital that is well fortified, well protected, ताकि क्योंकि कैपिटल अगर गिरी तो फिर पूरा एम्पायर हार जाता है, तो कैपिटल नीड्स टू बी वेल प्रोटेक्टेड. देन द ट्रेजरी, जहाँ पे पैसा रखा जाता है. एलाइज, जो फ्रेंडली states that can be relied upon during times of war and other help. And the last part is, the last element is the army. The army needs to be strong in order for the state to survive. So this was the Saptanga theory. Saptanga theory, the 7 elements of the state according to Arthashastra. And as we discussed earlier, the Mauryan Empire was a highly centralized empire with the king at the top and king calling all the shots. And the council of ministers of the king was personally selected by the king. So the king personally selected who would be the minister, personally selected by the king, and he took advice from the council, but he acted independently, or the final decision rested on the king. King एडवाइस ले सकता था, राय ले सकता था मिनिस्टर्स की, बट अल्टीमेटली क्या करना है वो किंग पे ही निर्भर करता था, राइट. एंड वन इम्पॉर्टेंट पॉइंट हियर इज, जो पुरोहिता था, जो कि चीफ प्रीस्ट होता था, ही लॉस्ट इम्पोर्टेंस ड्यूरिंग द मौर्यन एम्पायर, बिकॉज मौर्यन एम्पायर वाजंट ऑर्थोडॉक्स, या फिर वो जो कट्टर एक हिंदू राष्ट्र था वो नहीं था मौर्यन एम्पायर. we'll see why, because we saw Chandragupta Maurya, he became a Jain. Bindusara was Ajivika. Ashoka turned, he converted into Buddhism, right? So it wasn't a orthodox empire. That is why Purohit, the chief priest, he lost importance. And there were other ministers also. The names of the ministers and their role could be found in the notes, factual in nature. So there were 18 tirthas. Tirthas were the high ranking officials, and 27 adhyakshas. Adhyakshas were more like superintendents that overlooked the administration. They had different roles, like somebody took care of commerce, like finance minister, somebody took care of the markets, somebody took care of the army, right, somebody took care of the agriculture. So for different purposes they had different tirthas and adhyakshas. You can find the list in the notes again. Sometimes questions are asked naming a particular adhyaksha and to be matched with the role. And talking about land revenue was 1/4 to 1/6 of the produce to be paid either in cash or kind. Plus there were certain emergency taxes as well during emergency that could be raised, right. And when we talk about Ashoka, particularly during Ashoka's empire had 4 provinces. It was divided into 4 provinces, right. In the north was Uttar Patha. South was Dakshin Patha. Then there was Kalinga that was captured by Ashoka, and in the central part was Avanti Rashtra. So these were the 4 major provinces during Ashoka, and each was ruled by a governor who was somebody from royal blood. royal blood, or most often the son of the king. So this was the administration at central level, that there were 4 provinces ruled by a governor from royal blood. Now we'll talk about the provincial administration, that each province that was ruled by a governor was further divided into districts, and there were 3 major officials at district level: Pradesika, who looked after the overall administration, then Rajuka, who looked after the revenue administration of the district, and Yukta, who looked after the accountancy or accounts of the state. So these were the 3 officials at district level, right? And then we had intermediate level below the district. So it was below the district but above the villages. At intermediate level we had Gopa as the official, and Sthanika. इनका काम होता था to set up village boundaries, land register karna. Sthanika was basically for tax collection. So these were the officials at intermediate level, and then we had the villages as the basic unit of administration, with Gramika as the village head. Alright, and there were separate provisions for the city administration. So when we talk about cities, city administration was very elaborate, where the officials were divided into 6 committees of 5 member each. So 5-member committee was there, and there were 6 such committees that looked after different subjects like temples, water, agriculture, land. For all these purposes there were different committees in the city, and each committee had 5 members. So elaborate city administration provisions were there under Mauryan Empire. And when we talk about the judicial system or the system of justice, the king was the supreme judge. So king was like the chief justice of Mauryan Empire. Ultimate decision depended on the king, but there were uh, 2 courts, Dharmasthiya and Kantaka Sodhanas. So Dharmasthiyas were civil courts, and Kantaka Sodhanas were criminal courts. So we had civil and criminal courts separate, and the king was at the apex. और एक बहुत important point is there was an elaborate system of spy का पूरा system होता था, जिससे कि जो गवर्नर्स हो गए या फिर जो गवर्नमेंट ऑफिशियल्स हो गए, वो they used to have complete information, complete knowledge about what was happening in their area. Even kings had direct officials who reported directly to them about the secret information. And that is how such a large empire was controlled by one single man. And that is why when the king was weak, the empire uh, declined. So especially after Ashoka, there was a decline in the Mauryan Empire. You can find the complete list of different officials, what were they called, what was their role, in the notes. Sometimes they are directly asked in the exam, so that becomes important. And also the different types of taxes that were applicable to the people during Mauryas, so also have a look at them as well. And talking about Ashoka, Ashoka's real name was Devanam Piyadasi. So this was the actual name of Ashoka that was mentioned in most of his inscriptions. Ashoka is only found written in his inscriptions 3 times. The rest it is Devanampiya Piyadasi mentioned. So if the question comes that which ruler is called Devanampiya Piyadasi, it was Ashoka. And when we talk about Ashoka, he only fought one major battle. That was the Battle of Kalinga. कलिंगा की बैटल एक ही बैटल थी मेजर जो अशोका ने फाइट की थी, एंड कलिंगा ही एक ऐसा पार्ट था जो कि मौर्यन एम्पायर में अशोका ने ऐड किया था. रेस्ट ऑफ देम इधर बिंदुसारा और चंद्रगुप्त मौर्य एडेड. बट कलिंगा की बैटल में widespread casualties, widespread violence, blood, death देखकर Ashoka turned to peace and he converted to Buddhism. And he became sort of like a Buddhist monk, and he started with the policy of Dhamma. तो ये इसका कंसेप्ट समझना important है. What actually is Dhamma? Is it a new religion or was he trying to start a new religion or not? We'll discuss now. So talking about Dhamma, Dhamma was an ethical code. It was not a new religion but an ethical code that was introduced to foster harmony and social responsibility. Harmony and social responsibility के लिए अकबर ने एक ethical code बनाया था, the code by which people would live their lives, and it was not a religion, not a religion. So often it is confused to be a new religion that was started by Ashoka, but it was not a religion but an ethical code. It was set of guidelines that inculcated good qualities or good habits in people like non-violence, discipline, tolerance. तो इन सब के लिए एक एथिकल गाइडलाइन, एथिकल कोड अशोका ने निकाला था, दैट वाज कॉल्ड धम्मा. And then Ashoka said that I will not conquer new kingdoms through war, but I will conquer new kingdoms through Dhamma now. That I will spread Dhamma, and Dhamma से न्यू किंगडम्स को मैं जीतूंगा. जीतूंगा दैट मीन्स कॉन्कर नहीं करूंगा, बट कहते हैं ना जैसे दिल जीत लिया, वैसे आई विल विन ओवर अदर किंगडम्स. I will win over other kingdoms through spreading Dhamma, and that is why Ashoka created officials called Dhamma Mahamatra, जिनका ये काम था, whose work was to spread Dhamma. They used to undertake Dhamma yatras. तो वो धम्मा यात्रा लेते थे, एंड जहां पे भी जाते थे अशोका's message of Dhamma were spread by them. धम्मा यात्रा. एंड ये सब अशोका के पिलर इंस्क्रिप्शंस हम आर्ट एंड कल्चर में पढ़ेंगे. अशोका हैड पिलर इंस्क्रिप्शन, सो ऑल दिस इज इंस्क्राइब्ड इन द पिलर इंस्क्रिप्शंस ऑफ अशोका. मेजर पिलर इंस्क्रिप्शंस के 7 पिलर इंस्क्रिप्शंस हैं, और उनका कंप्लीट डिटेल्स यू कैन फाइंड इन द नोट्स. इसमें क्या लिखा गया है, तो मेजरली इट वाज अबाउट धम्मा. ही बैंड एनिमल सैक्रिफाइस in royal kitchen, and he undertook many such actions to spread non-violence, discipline, tolerance within Mauryan Empire. Right? So this was the concept of Ashoka's Dhamma. क्यों आया? We know कलिंगा वॉर के बाद he wanted peace and harmony. इसी के लिए धम्मा आया. What it means? Was it a new religion? No. ये एक new ethical code था for these purposes. And how he spread Dhamma? Through Dhamma Mahamatras, undertaking Dhamma Yatras. इसके through साउथ ईस्ट एशिया में गए धम्मा महामात्रास, जैसे कि थाईलैंड में नाउ वी नो बुद्धिज्म है बहुत ज्यादा. सो इट वाज ऑल ड्यू टू द एफर्ट्स ऑफ अशोका. श्रीलंका में धम्मा यात्रा लिया. सो दैट वाज द पर्पस एंड concept of Dhamma under Ashoka. More details can be found in the notes in the description box. So now talking about the decline of Maurya, I mentioned that the king had to be strong to take care of such a centralized empire. But Ashoka ke baad, his son Kunal and the successors were not that strong, and that is what led to the weak successors after Ashoka led to the decline of Mauryan Empire. Right? And the last ruler was Brihadratha, who was assassinated by one of his ministers, Pushyamitra Sunga, who established Sunga dynasty, and Mauryan Empire was overtaken by Sunga dynasty in 184 BC. So now next we'll talk about post Mauryas.